What up, my friends? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're doing one of my favorites. We're going to be discussing all of the books that I read in the month of June. I read a total of 8 titles in the month of June, so we're going to talk about those. And then I'm also going to do a brief review of the 5-star reads that I had in the second quarter, so the ones that I read in April, May, and June. I'll remind you of those 5 stars in case you missed those videos, in case you're looking for ones that you should definitely get on your radar. The reviews are always spoiler-free. I share my star rating as well as my spice rating. I previously did a video where I break down exactly what guidelines I use for both the star and spice ratings. So I'll have that link down below in case you want to see it, and I'm popping it up on the screen right now just to give you a brief idea into the mindset that I have when it comes to rating books. So starting off with our first book, I actually dove into the month of June with a thriller, and it was called A Killing Cold by Kate Alice Marshall. This one I gave a 4.5 out of 5 on stars, 1 out of 5 on spice, so there is some spicy scenes in this book. This one follows Theodora and Connor, who have a whirlwind romance, but their past could not be more different. He comes from a very elite family and invites her to their secluded cabin so he can introduce her to his family and win them over. However, once she gets there, she starts to have a creepy suspicion that she's been there before. This book would be such a vibe during the winter. Okay, I was reading it in like the heat of summer in Florida. This book was cold. You felt like you were in the woods, like in freezing cold woods while you're reading this book. It was just bone chilling. It was super dynamic, and the way that the author paced this thriller was phenomenal. It was like a slow build at first, and then you hit a mark in the book where you just do not want to put it down, and you were like chasing the ending. The characters had just enough suspicion where you didn't hate them, but you also didn't trust them, and you never knew if like the narrator was a reliable one, which I just thought was awesome. The twists and turns that happen, some of them I saw coming, some of them I had absolutely no idea. And it just kept going right up until the end. Like, it never let up. So if you're looking for a thriller that's just going to take over your day and you're going to want to just be sucked into it, I would definitely recommend that book. The next one that I read was a historical romance, and it's called To Have and to Hoax by Martha Waters. This one I gave a 3 out of 5 on stars, 0 out of 5 on spice. So this one has Violet and James, who are married, but they've basically been estranged inside the same house for years, barely speaking to one another, and nobody knows why. James goes out of town, and she ends up receiving a letter from one of his friends that he was severely injured in a horse accident. She rushes off to go be by his side, but realizes that he's recovered and he wasn't even planning to tell her. So she comes up with a way to get revenge, and it ends up opening a lot of feelings that neither of them knew they had. This one was just not a total love for me. I felt like it was really absurd at some points, but it was also really entertaining. So I'm not mad that I read it, but I just felt like it was a little over the top. It's super heavy on miscommunication, which just isn't one of my favorites, and the characters were borderline irritating to me. There was a lot of bickering happening, and you don't feel like anything really gets resolved very well. So it's almost like I want a peek into their next fight to see if they actually learned anything from it, because it doesn't feel like they did. Overall, if you're looking for a historical romance and you've kind of read through a lot, it's not I would say don't read it, but I just wouldn't rush out to read it. The next one was Paging Dr. Summers by Jennifer Peel. This one was also a 3 out of 5 on stars, 0 out of 5 on spice. This one's a contemporary romance. So for this one, Brooke shows up in Aspen Lake, and she has a bucket list in hand that her beloved mom, who just passed away, had provided her and encouraged her to get done. One of the things on the list is to have a summer fling, and when she meets a very handsome doctor, she awkwardly asks him to be her fling, and he could not seem more disgusted by it. This one definitely has summer vibes to it, which I loved. So if you're looking for a low commitment style romance, this one would be a good option, but it's not one that I would rush out to read. It's one of those ones that's really like on approaching cringy from awkward, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's like the good style cheesy, then awkward, then cringy. This is somewhere between awkward and cringy. There were some points that just were a little too much for me, but overall I think it's a solid read, just not one that's like super memorable. Next one was called Till Summer Do Us Part by Meghan Quinn. And this one is a spicy contemporary romance. I gave it a 3 out of 5 on stars and a 3 out of 5 on spice. Definitely gets spicy in this one. This one follows Scotty, who has recently moved to New York City with the intention of restarting her life after a painful divorce. When she gets a new job, she finds that the culture at the new job encourages married couples. She feels the pressure of being happily married, so when she's in a meeting, she accidentally blurts out that she's married, and one of her coworkers questions her on it, so she has to dig deep into the lie, and she actually gets her best friend's brother to pretend to be her husband, but it leads to them having to go on a couples retreat with all of her coworkers. So this one was just not a love for me. It started out so strong. Like the first 8 or 9 chapters of this book, I was absolutely cackling. There were some unhinged scenes that I was reading out loud to John because they were so funny. But then at some point, it just got to a point where it didn't even feel like a romance because they were fighting so much. And these people barely knew each other. So the fights just felt like they were coming out of nowhere because you guys don't even know each other. It was hard to really sink into the romance of it all because it just didn't feel like there was any chemistry or connection between them. So definitely not one of my favorites of Meghan Quinn. I could give you a list of 10 that are just so good, but this one was just not a love for me. The next one was an absolute love for me. This was Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This one was a young adult fantasy. I gave it a 5-star and 0 out of 5 on Spice. So in this one, we have Bree, who's still reeling from the loss of her mother. She's accepted into an early college program at UNC Chapel Hill. Once she gets there, she realizes there's this elite society that's hidden and rooted in magic. She soon finds out that this secret society may have something to do with her mother's death, and she'll do anything to get to the root of it. This book was absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. This book had so many layers to it, but it never felt like it was too much. The author does do a lot of information dumping. I think that's what people in the book life call it. And that's usually not my vibe. I usually need, you need to walk me through this slowly, okay? You need to hold my hand. We're going to take a nice little stroll through the story, through the characters, through the world building. That's usually my vibe. This one, that's not what happens. She really does dump information at you in clumps. But I weirdly had a trust from the first page of this book that the author knew what she was doing, and I was along for the ride, and my trust paid off because by the end, everything just makes sense. Everything 100% makes sense. Nothing felt like filler. Nothing felt like, hey, she didn't have to spend a chapter on that. It didn't feel like that at all. There's also some unique timeline jumps. I don't know how to explain it without spoilers, but the way she handled that was phenomenal. There's a bunch of subjects that are touched upon. I think this is the perfect book if you're not into fantasy. This book was more rooted in universal topics that can kind of be fantasy or kind of be real life. I also appreciated the fact that there is romance in this, but it's sprinkled throughout and it's very much in the background of this book. It's not a priority. And because it's a young adult, there's no spicy scenes. So some of my favorite books that I've read that are fantasy, they tend to have a lot of romance in it. And I'm a romance reader. I love romance, but sometimes when you're really chasing the story, it feels like the romance gets in the way. And that does not happen here at all. I cannot recommend this book more. It's got a dark academia feel to it. I don't know. There's something about this book. It's a 100% recommend for me. One of my favorite books this year for sure. All right, so this next one's going to be a little weird to cover, but I'm just going to try and do my best because it's actually a group of 3 novellas, but the collection of novellas is called To Kiss a Wallflower. And the 3 authors that are in it are Jen Geigle Johnson. I probably butchered that name. I'm so sorry. Heather Moore and Anneka Walker. These are all historical romances, and every single one of them I gave a 4 out of 5. So I'll just say for all 3 of these, it's a recommend from me. If you happen to have Kindle Unlimited, that's how I read them. And I thought all 3 of them were incredibly charming, timeless style romance, not overdone. The characters were so beautiful. It's amazing that there were 3 different authors. Definitely 3 different styles of writing, but they felt like they complemented each other really well. When I've read author roundups like this one, there's been authors that kind of stand out more than the other, or authors that just weren't my vibe. But in this one, I thought all 3 were really cute. The next one was Those Girls by Chevy Stevens, and this was another thriller. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 on Stars, and it's a 5 out of 5 on Spice. Definitely check triggers because there are some very sensitive topics in this one. So this one follows the Campbell sisters, who range in ages from 14 to almost 18, and they've already endured so much in their short lives. But it gets even worse when there's an altercation at their house and they feel the need to flee. While they're trying to get to their next destination, they end up breaking down and end up in the hands of a couple very dangerous guys. This book was incredibly intense. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. It's a well done thriller. but it's not one that I would say I could really recommend because it's very intense. It's a lot to take on. It's very dark, very twisted. So you would have to definitely be in a certain mindset to be able to take on this book. And I would definitely look up the content and trigger warnings before you head in. But if that all clears for you, like it did for me, this was such a well done book. What I loved about this book is it's not super complicated. And that made it so much more creepy because it felt so realistic. It felt like something that could happen to friends of yours or loved ones of yours or your kids once they get to like the teenage stage. So that made it almost more hard to read because it just felt realistic. It didn't feel like any of the twists and turns couldn't have happened. I also usually have a really hard time with liking characters in thrillers because they tend to try and make the people in the books pretty suspicious because they're usually involved in some type of a situation. But these ones, they felt incredibly real. It made sense for how they acted because of what they've gone through, but you still wanted to root them on. And the strength that they find to work through the things that they've been through was super inspiring. Overall, I just think it was very, very well done. The last one that I read was called Foolish Game by Laura Beers. This was a historical romance and such a good way to wrap up the month because it was a 4.5 out of 5 stars for me, 0 out of 5 on Spice. It's a squeaky clean romance. This one follows Isabella, who has made it clear to her entire family that she has no intention of marrying, but she does strike up a deal with her brother that she'll try to be courted this season and allow his best friend to be the one to select her suitors for her, as long as when they get to the country estate, she doesn't have to go to any social commitments. What she doesn't know is that her brother's best friend intends to use this matchmaking opportunity to prove to her that he is the perfect man for her. The word that I walked away from when I finished reading this book was darling. It was just darling. It was timeless. It was classic. It was swoon-worthy romance, built up the perfect way. I felt like I was like smirking the entire time I was reading this book. And what was really nice is I'm the type that in these historical romance, or any romance really in general, I love a meddling family. I love when the family gets in on things and try to meddle and like cause a little bit of mischief in like a good-natured way. In this one, it's the opposite. They actually kind of like silently nudged the situation. And as a reader, I couldn't help but feel like I was like invited into like a family secret. Like we all knew that the two of them were going to get together, but the two of them didn't know it yet. He didn't believe he could make it happen, and she didn't believe that she wanted it. The only reason why it wasn't a full 5 star for me is because there were some points that were a little overdone, a little dramatic. There's a couple scenes that I was like, that's a little much. But overall, I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this one, and it's one I would recommend getting on your radar if you're into historical romances. Really cute. So my top 3 for the month of June, definitely Legendborn. That is number 1. Number 2, I would say, is A Foolish Game. And number 3 is really hard because both of those thrillers were really good. I think I'm going to have to go with A Killing Cold by Kate Alice Marshall as my number 3, but just know that Those Girls by Chevy Stevens is a very close third. Okay, so, but those are my top 3 for the month of June. And then to recap the ones that I rated a 5 star for the months of April, May, and June, we had The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. That was a reread for me, but I locked it in again at a 5. If you haven't read that, definitely one I'd recommend. It's like a dystopian young adult. I'm sure you've heard of it, okay? Most people have heard of it or seen the movies, but if you've only seen the movies and haven't read the books, definitely recommend picking that up. The next one was The Amalfi Curse by Sarah Penner. That book I am still thinking about. It was so good. It was a historical fiction, has a little bit like of a magic element to it. It's got a jumping timeline, so it does jump back to the past, but then there is a present day as well. 2 different female leads in this one, and just so well done. It's like National Treasure meets The Little Mermaid meets Hocus Pocus. I don't know. It's a vibe. That's all you need to know about that. Maybe meets National Treasure. Did I already say National Treasure? Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't know. It was just a vibe, okay? There was a lot going on, but it was really great. One that I would definitely recommend. And then the last 5 star for me was Legendborn, which we just talked about. Another definite recommend for me. So that's everything we have to chitty chat about books today. If you've had a book that you've read lately that you really, really love and you think I should pick up, please leave that in the comments down below. I hope that I delivered whatever you needed when you clicked on that thumbnail, and I hope you have a magical day. Bye.